Hey everybody, so we're going to be doing a little tier list on patch 4.2 I think we're on now. So this is just going to be my thoughts on where the meta is and all that fun stuff. It's important to note that scrims do not currently exist, so this is all kind of just based on ranked. So with that being said, we'll get started with something that might seem a bit spicy to some people, but maybe not to others. So Andro going in B. He's probably the most consistent flank right now. He's got a whole bunch of good matchups into other flanks and all that fun stuff, but he's got some pretty bad matchups. He doesn't do well into double backline. A lot of the supports farm him right now, stuff like Cassie and Lian, right? He's got some pretty decent counter picks in Buck and Lux, but overall solid. He'll do well. He does really well in ranked because a lot of people are really good Andros, and he does really well in duels. So he's just a skill-based character. Not too strong. He's a bit forgiving with all of his ammo, but that's really it. He's just pretty much in a good spot. Ashe going in C. So she's a really good off tank, right? She does really well into squishies, but she just kind of suffers when you try to put her against any off tank. So if you do get Ashe in a good matchup for her, she'll do really well. But most of the time, that's not really going to happen. Atlas is kind of the opposite. He's really everything you could want in an off tank. He's got pick potential, he's got good damage, he's got a really nice shield. He has good matchups into their off tanks. He's never really a bad pick. His only weakness is that he's kind of passive, but even then, like, he's still good at being aggressive. It's just not necessarily his strong suit, but he's gonna be pick or ban most of the time. Barik is going to be first thing in SS, so this character is going to win you point 9 out of 10 times, right? He doesn't just win it by just surviving either. He wins it because he's going to threaten kills on the other team's main tank. So he's very strong. He just survives. He just does a lot of damage. He's going to win point for you, and that is insanely strong right now. BK going in B. Again, just a pretty well-balanced character. He does the whole blaster thing really well. He does, he's really good on his maps. He's got his weaknesses, like, don't pick this character on like Frozen Guard or Timbermill or anything, but if you get him on Jag or Stone Keep, he's going to do really well. Just overall really solid, does the blaster thing really well. Next up is Buck. Buck is also going in C. So Buck is like really good at what he does, right? He shuts down flank 1v1s. But other than that, he doesn't really do anything, and I don't think this meta really revolves around flank 1v1s. So Buck does his job really well. It's just not really needed. Cassie's going in A, so she's not necessarily overtuned. She does a lot of things well, right? She does poke, she does anti-flank, she does burst. She has decent mobility. Her ult's not great, but overall, just like, if you need a backliner, just pick Cassie. She's going to do really well, even though Impulse kind of is still on top of Exaction, because it's just a bit more consistent, but yes, just solid backliner. For Corvus going in B, so Corvus has taken a bit of a hit, right? His healing got nerfed, his lifesteal cards have gotten nerfed, the meta's kind of shifted away from DPS, so he does well when your team needs to be really split or when your team is really focused on DPS, and he does that well, but outside of those situations, he's outclassed a little bit. His healing is outclassed, his ult isn't great. All he really does is enable a DPS across maps now, and that's fine. That's really important. That's really strong. And he has lifesteal, which is always fun, lifesteal and speed. But that's really all he does. So he's got his niche, he's good at it, but he doesn't do more than that. So solid B tier. Dredge is going to go in C. So Dredge does his thing well, just like Corvus, right? But his thing is less needed, right? He's sort of like Buck, right? He's going to spam out an area, and he's going to do that super well. He has like decent poke, really good self-sustain. But other than that, like, there's not many games where Dredge is a good pick, either because you don't really need that level of spam, or there's maybe a better option. So Dredge is good at what he does, it's just what he does isn't needed very often. But if you do pick him in a good situation, he's going to pop off. That's kind of the theme in C. It's like, these characters are really good, you just shouldn't pick them very often. Next up is Drogoz. So same thing, right? If you get a free Drogoz game, right, the other team doesn't have like many hit scans, then you can pretty much pick Worm Drogoz whenever, and he'll do really well, right? He's just free damage the entire game. He has other niches as well. I don't think I've seen a need for Fusillade recently, but like Combustible on Frog Isle and Ice Mines is still good. So he does his thing well. It's just he kind of either relies on the map or the other team's comp, but he's still a really just solid character if you do get him into one of those scenarios. Evie. So Evie's going to be in B tier as well. Same thing, most flanks are pretty balanced right now. If she's a good Evie, like good Evie players will pop off, but she does have some bad matchups. You can't pick her everywhere. But if you do get a good Evie game, yeah, she's gonna do really solid, and that's you can pick her in most scenarios though, which is sort of the theme with B tier. You can pick them in most scenarios. Like tier lists aren't necessarily like how good a character are, it's how often can you pick them and they'll do well, I guess would be a decent way of saying it. So Nando. Nando is also going to go in B, right? Just solid main tank. You can pretty much just throw him everywhere and he'll do okay. Like you're never gonna say, oh, this is an amazing Nando game here, right? That's not really gonna happen. But you can always say Nando's, just a good main tank here, and he's gonna main tank good. He's gonna sit on point. He's gonna shield. He's gonna do his thing. He's gonna live. Furia is going to A. So I think this character is highly undervalued right now. Her ult is insane, her damage is insane. Especially with tank meta sort of coming back. Furia always does well with tanks. It lets her charge her ult, lets teams be aggressive, and usually teams with a lot of tanks want to be aggressive, so solid A tier, undervalued. If it was a DPS meta, the pockets would be in this spot, but since it's more of a tank meta, Furia is going to take this spot. Grohk is going in C as well. Again, this is for Maelstrom, by the way. Spirit's Domain is like D tier, maybe F. But if you see like a good game for Grohk, right, there's a lot of deployables, there's a lot of, your team wants to be aggressive with ult, but you can just farm damage with Shock Pulse, then Grohk's going to do well. If there are no deployables, right, then it's not really a good game for Grohk. Grover is going in S tier. This character is, so people say he's map dependent, right? I don't think he's map dependent, I think he's comp dependent. If you have a comp that wants to play around a Grover's going to do well. He's going to be probably the best support in the game. He is going to be the best support in the game. If you can build a comp around Grover, you should, because the value that he brings is insane. He forces an entire item buy at a high level from the entire enemy team. He has really good damage. He has just good matchups into pretty much everything, just because he can cripple them and then follow them up. And then your team can follow up, right? His ult is insane. Like, just being able to poke out DPS is such a strong thing for support, so solid S tier. Imani. So Imani's going to go in D tier. She's a backline DPS who doesn't do the backline DPS thing well, right? So she has two really strong abilities in the ice right click and the fire right click, right? What are they called? Like the volleyball and Inferno Cannon. And those are super strong abilities, but they're tacked on to a character who does like Jenos levels of damage. So this character would be really strong if she actually did any amount of damage, but she doesn't. Inara is also going in D. So it's sort of the same issue as Imani, right? It's like Imani wants to be a backline DPS. She wants to shoot things, but she doesn't have the damage for it. Inara wants to stand on point, but she doesn't really have the survivability for it anymore. So she just kind of is outclassed, right? Other things survive better than her. She doesn't survive super well, so you're not really going to pick her. Also, Treacherous Ground and Impasse go in a solid F tier. They're pretty much throw picks, unless it's like, they're throw picks. You should never pick Cripple Inara. You should never pick Inara, and there should never be a time where you want to pick Cripple Inara. So yeah, just because Inara just can't really survive anymore, she doesn't survive well, D tier. For Io's also going to go in D tier. So this character lost her reason to exist, right? There's never a scenario in which you want this character simply because of how squishy they are, right? Like, DR is still really good, her healing's okay, but she doesn't really offer anything else, right? She offers healing, and that's it. Like, she's almost worse than Ying, right? Because her ult is worse. Like, she doesn't offer anything else. She just has DR. And at that point, there are more things that other supports bring that are more valuable, right? Either their ult, or their damage, or their CC. Brings nothing else. And she's the squishiest character in the game, right? If the other team has anything that has any sort of mobility and they want Ao to be dead, the Ao's gonna die. For Jenos. So Jenos is gonna go to B tier. This character has fallen off a decent bit. I'm gonna attribute most of that to tanks coming back. So again, like, enabling your DPS, always great. But since tanks are so strong right now, it's usually better. Because before it was just like, okay, I enable my DPS, and that's how you got your DPS to do things. But now it's more, if I enable my tanks will make more space for my DPS, right? Or you just get more value out of doing things as a support than your DPS do out of getting a bit of damage amp. So because of him not really being needed as much, like, he's still good, right? Luminary is insane, healing through walls is insane. It's just the nerf hit him kind of hard, and the meta shifted, right? If we were still in a DPS meta, like if tanks weren't as strong as they were, he'd go up a tier, maybe 2. But since tanks are so strong, the meta's going to revolve more around them, and Jenos never really has done too well with tanks. Khan. So Khan's going in SS. He is basically, he's the best off tank in the game right now. So he has good matchups into every tank, right? He'll win every fight with a tank. He has good survivability, he has a shield, he has CC, his ult is an execute. Like, there's not really too much more to it than that. He has good tank matchups, and his ult is an execute, and he bullies DPS. So, like, he just does everything you could ever want in off tank. He can play slow, he can play aggressive, he can do literally anything. Just pick or ban every game. Kinessa. So Kinessa, B tier. She's really the only sniper left, right? Strix has kind of fallen off the face of the earth, so Kinessa's definitely risen in popularity a little bit because she's more uncontested. She's more pickable in more scenarios than in C tier, just because, like, it's easier to play around her. She doesn't necessarily rely on the other team to get value. So solid pick. If you need a sniper, she's there. She's not like super oppressive or anything. Like Shrugrit's a bit annoying, a bit strong, but if you got on top of her, she kind of falls off, right? She doesn't do well at close range and all that fun stuff. So solid B tier. Koga. Koga's going in F, right? This is for PC, by the way. I should probably specify that. Koga does nothing. There's nothing he does that you could ever want on a team, right? He's damage and a little bit of survivability. So he's either outclassed. First of all, he just doesn't do any of those things super well, right? His damage is pretty low, and his survivability isn't great. Like, it relies on his dashes, and that's not much survivability. His ult isn't good. His fall off's bad. The one niche he had in the past was as a pocket, but even then he kind of got outclassed by Talus, and since pockets have fallen off, and you don't necessarily want to hyper pocket someone because tanks are so strong, and we'll just bully that pocket, Koga's sort of lost his niche. Lux. So Lux is going in D tier. He's pickable, right? He has 50% lifesteal, insane damage, but he's inconsistent, right? Because his mark goes to the highest kill streak, which is usually going to be a tank or a support, and he wants to be fighting DPS. So he's not going to have his mark on DPS as much as he wants anymore. And he's very map dependent. He's kind of comp dependent. He's fine if you could get him in, like, the perfect luck scenario, yeah, he's gonna do well, but that scenario is gonna be like 1 in 100 games, and even then there might be a better option. For Lian, so Lian's going to B tier, same thing as all the others, right? She's good. She hits Q good. That's about it. Like her ult's nice for flanks. She does really well into flanks. She pokes pretty well. She has decent tank burn. Doesn't do too well with tanks. Like she gets ran at pretty easily. She does really well into squishy dive, but pretty poorly into tank dive. But she's if you can keep her alive, if you can protect her, right? If you force her to take fights with squishies, then she's gonna do really well. Maeve. So we're putting pretty much all the mobile flanks in the same tier. Like pretty much exactly what I said about Evie, right? Like you can pick her in most games. She's gonna do well, but she's not like insanely strong to the point where you want to pick her in that amount of games. Like she's a really solid character, and she's really strong, but she's just not really. She's just strong, right? She's not really anything more than that. For Makoa, Makoa is also going in B. So with the half shell nerfs, his shield is shootable, right? With Chronos free, it's a 4-second downtime, I believe. So you can't necessarily rely on it anymore. His ult's kinda garbage. His mobility is not great since you have to rely on half shell. There's maybe like a Plucker Leviathan game that you could play, but those aren't consistent enough. Like that's not gonna happen often enough to the point where I feel like I should judge Makoa based on that. So you're in half shell. He has not great tank matchups. He's just kind of there for the hook and the shield, right? That's all this character is now. He's the hook and the threat of hook, and he shields for DPS, and that's really all he does. His damage isn't great, his mobility is not great, his ult's not great, his poke's bad. He just shields and he hooks. And those are enough to make him B tier, but nothing really more than that. Damba's going in A tier. So Damba, he's gotten a few buffs, and his healing is now at the level where if you're a decent Damba, even if like just an okay Damba, you will get like a lot of healing, right? He survives well, and he's got CC. That's pretty much Damba's thing, right? He heals well, he's got really good survivability, and he's got CC. And all that makes him really valuable. He's extremely flexible. Like you can pick him anywhere, and he won't do poorly. So yeah, he's just like, if you need either a slow comp, or maybe you don't want Grover for some reason, if you need a lot of healing, Damba is the support to go for right now. Moji's going in F. There's not a reason to pick this character right now. She doesn't do well. She doesn't do damage. She just, I don't think she has a good matchup that's not like Inara or Raum. It's like maybe if the other team has Inara and Raum, you can, yeah, I'm going to farm those tanks, and then you lose to the DPS because you're Moji. So there's never really a reason to pick this character. She falls off to any level of teamwork. She falls off to any level of decent gameplay. Her ult's not great. She's like you could make her work if you really wanted to, but there's no reason to. The payoff just isn't there. For Pip, alright, this is going to be a spicy take. If this was like DPS Pip, I might put him C, maybe B, probably around C, but I'm going to talk about Healer Pip right now. So Healer Pip, I'm going to put this one in A, and whoa, that's a shocker. So Pip is finally at the level where his healing output is right up there with the best supports, right? If you play a good Pip, you can get Grover, Damba, Ying levels of healing. And alongside those decent levels of healing, also bring one of, like a top 3 ult, right? Pip ult is a team fight winner. So Pip is basically just like good healing numbers, best ult, like one of the best ults in the game. And that ult's just going to win you fights, right? It's just like, it doesn't matter, like, if he doesn't have, like, great poke, he has okay damage, he has, like, some CC, I guess, decent survivability, not great, but decent. But his ult will just win you fights. So if it's a good Pip game, I would 100% pick Pip over pretty much any support in the game right now, if it's a good Pip game. For Raum, so Raum's going in A. He has fallen off a bit. He's a bit more killable now, but a good Raum will still run free in your backline forever. So he's still a character that doesn't need to be countered and all that fun stuff. A lot of the common tanks do have good matchups into him, which is not great, but that doesn't really matter. He's just going to run, right? So, strong character. You still do need counters to him. It's just a bit easier to counter him now. But if you don't counter him, he's strong, and just by forcing counters, that puts him up a tier. He does well even with counters. He shreds tanks. Just a really solid pick overall. For Ruckus, so Ruckus, I don't think Ruckus is ever going to be bad if he stays the way he is. He is always going to be really good in aggressive comps. He's always going to get a kill, or at the very least trade for a squishy. And that sort of aggression, that damage, that mobility, right? That's always just going to be super strong. So he does need to be played, in his own unique playstyle, but if you get that down, then maybe not the best aggressive off tank, but he's definitely up there. For Seris, Seris is going in D. So I know some people have been like saying, oh my god, she got buffed. She's like playable now. She doesn't actually do more healing than the other supports, right? Like Grover, maybe not Grover, Grover sometimes, but Damba, Pip, Ying, they can all out-heal him. Even Corvus sometimes. I'll out-heal Seris, but the thing with Seris is that she does insanely well when teams stack, right? So if you're in ranked and everyone is like stacking on or around point, Seris is going to be the best healer in the game, like by far. She's going to get AoE heals on everyone. She's going to farm damage. She's like not going to get flanked, so she's going to be able to put out a lot of numbers. But as soon as people start playing like well, and they start playing like in the offlane, Seris falls off like immediately. She's not going to be able to farm ult as well. Her healing's going to suffer a lot. She falls off super hard late game. Her ult doesn't get value into 9 out of 10 comps. It's just, she's just outclassed. She is still outclassed in still everything she does. She still has the same issues. She's more pickable. Like you could pick her and get away with it, but there's no reason to pick her over anything else. For Sha, so Sha is going in C. Decent nerf to Sandtrap has kind of made him fall off a little bit in terms of the anti-flank role. Cassie and Lian have sort of taken that back from him. So you can still pick him for that burst and that cripple. It's not bad, but he's just sort of outclassed and he doesn't really bring too much. If you do get a good Sha game, like if Sha has like very good DPS matchups and like decent tank matchups, yeah, he'll do well. But usually he's just gonna be outclassed by Lian and Cassie now. For Skye, so this is heal Skye, right? This is Smoke and Daggers. Debilitate. Debilitate maybe goes in D or C, but somewhere in between. But Smoke and Daggers Skye. So this amount of healing and tank shred is very good in this sort of meta, right? If you can play with a tank, right, and just keep them alive, you can shred the other team's tanks. It's pretty strong. It does have counters. And it is kind of map and comp dependent, but if you do get a good Skye game, then she's gonna perform super well. Lots of healing, lots of damage, lots of area denial. She just forces tanks to hate their lives. So, except for Strix. Strix is going in F tier. This character lost all of his damage. He just doesn't do enough damage anymore. Like you can walk around the corner to say, "Oh damn, I got shot by Strix," and then like you're not gonna get followed up on because his fire rate's so slow now. So he still has burst, but his overall damage output is so low, and he doesn't punish people as well as he used to. Like you have more time to get behind corners now. He's just not really ever gonna kill anything unless he gets like a surprise headshot or anything. So doesn't have damage, can't finish anything up. You can afford to take a shot from him because his DPS is so low. He's just not good. I'd rather pick anything else. Talus. So Talus is D tier. I think this character is somewhat underrated. Can farm tanks okay, farms backlines okay. I don't think he's good. The ult's pretty decent if you know what you're doing, but overall it's just there's not really a reason to pick him. He falls off into a lot of characters right now. Cassie, Lian, like Sha has a good matchup into him, for example, right? Most flanks have a good matchup into him. He just doesn't have great matchups, but if you do get him in one of those games, he'll perform okay. He'll do okay. But there's no reason to really pick him. Term is a solid main tank. Pretty much the same tier as Fernando, right? He's a bit better than Fernando on some situations, but a bit worse in others. He just kind of lives on point. That's about it. That's really all he does, right? He's not great as an off tank. He's okay at pushing. Like, Siphon is a ridiculously strong ability, but that's really all he has. And he has not great matchups into some of the more common tanks right now. For Tiger. So Tiger is going in A tier. One of the better DPS right now. People really compare him to Cassie a lot. I think he's less generic than Cassie. Like, he doesn't have as many good situations as Cassie. But if you do get a good game for Tiger, he's gonna probably do better than Cassie, right? Self-sustain is nuts. His burst is nuts. He can hit around corners. He has a slow. His ult is like pretty versatile. It's just in some situations there's better options, or some situations he's not great, but you could probably pick him in most situations and make him work. But when you do get a good game for Tiger, then Tiger's gonna do real well. Torvald. Okay, Torvald is really confusing for me. So this character got like nerfed to like Oblivion, right? Or not nerfed to Oblivion. He got Thanks Grandpa nerfed by 200, so it's an 800 shield now. And the thing is, if I duo with someone who I know is like a decent DPS, and I play Torvald and they play DPS, and I pocket them, I think I have like an 80% win rate on this character or something. But in ranked, he's not good. Like, if it's two randoms, two people who don't know each other, playing Torvald and one's in the pocket, like, he's not going to do well. You need to definitely know what you're doing on Torvald, like, and it's not complicated, right? It's just follow DPS around and hit Q, but so many people get distracted from doing that, and the character just falls off, because you need to be pocketing someone. And the DPS needs to know how to play around pockets, and how to ego with that. And a lot of people don't. So I think that unless you're duoing with this character, he's not worth picking. He's not worth banning. Like if you're duoing with someone and say, hey, I'm going to Tor pocket, you can do that and you'll win most of your games. Because he's still insane. But if it's just ranked, I don't think this character is worth picking. Which is really weird for me. So I don't know. I legitimately don't know where to pick him. I think that if you are in, you're in a duo with someone, and you're pocketing a DPS as Torvald, I think he's still the best character in the game. But in ranked, I don't think he's worth picking, which is really weird, so I have no idea where to put this guy. For Tyra. So, Tyra's going in B. Solid DPS, right? She doesn't have great range. She has really good survivability. She brawls super well. But she just gets outranged really hard by some DPS, which makes her a bit map dependent. Even if she does get up close, there are still things that can outbrawl her, or like outtrade her. So, good character, does her thing well. That's about it. She is really strong when she is good, but again, you can sort of play around her weakness with her range, and as well as not having a great ult. And no mobility, but Viktor. So Viktor's going in D. This character's thing is that he has damage, and he kind of lost his damage. So it's almost the same thing as Strix, but to a lesser degree, right? So he's gonna do damage, but other things do more damage. So you can pick this guy, and he's gonna perform okay, but there's no reason to pick him. Vivian, same thing, legitimately exact same thing. Vivian's only thing is that she does damage, and she doesn't do as much damage anymore. There's better things. Like Vivian and Viktor are the exact same character right now. They just the only thing they bring to the table is damage, and other things do more damage. Willow. Willow is A tier because she is like, if you give up a Willow and there's no counters and it's like a good Willow map, she's gonna win the game, right? She's gonna win point. She's gonna farm ult. Her ult's gonna get insane amount of value. She's gonna farm tanks. She's gonna farm DPS. She doesn't have as many bad matchups as people think, right? If the other team is like an Andro, you can buy Haven, use your DR, use your HP, and she can actually win that matchup, especially if she's like in the backline. Like a solo Andro is not enough to deal with a Willow. It's gonna be a good matchup, and it's gonna threaten her ult a little bit, but it's not really gonna stop her from burning tanks and winning points. So, really good character. I think she is heavily underrated right now, and she just needs answers to her. For Ying, so Ying, the only thing that Ying brings to the table right now is healing and a really good ult. Unfortunately, all the other supports also have a lot of healing and a really good ult, so Ying's pickable, and she's good when she is picked. Her healing is a bit like lacking, it feels, compared to some other sports, but her ult is still one of the best ults in the game. She just does a lot of healing. If you want Damba, but you can't have Damba, then you pick Ying. Xin. So Xin is Zin's going in A. He would be in maybe B or C, but his ult is an insta-kill. So it's a decent character, right? Decent kit, survives for a long time, duels pretty well, brawls pretty well. He's got really insane survivability. And then his ult's an insta-kill, right? So it's like, it's a decent character with an insane ult. So he's an A tier. That's really it. That's just Xin. He's a decent character with an insane ult. Vora. So I think people are still a little undecided on Vora. I'm going to put her in B tier. She doesn't seem broken. She seems reasonable compared to the rest of the flanks. So I'm going to put her with the rest of the flanks. I think she's really strong. I think she has good matchups into a lot of things. Her self-sustain is really insane. I think people are realizing that her ult's pretty good. So, solid B tier. I'm not 100% on this one, but it's my best guess. Yagaraf, oh boy. So I made an entire video on this one, right? I think she is SS, one of the best tanks in the game. Probably the second best tank in the game after Torv. Even maybe above Torv, I don't know. I haven't played a game with Torv and Yago, so I'm not exactly sure how they compare head to head, but best actual tank in the game. Nothing can stop her from doing what she wants to do, right? She is effectively uncounterable unless you scuff your draft so hard that, congratulations guys, we countered the Yagaraf. We only lose to the other 4 characters on our team instead of losing to the Yagaraf. So I made a video, it's probably linked or something if you want to hear more about this, but basically insane survivability, unstoppable mobility. Ult is insane, forces you to look at her, results in a kill if you don't. Even if you do, you just you punish it by looking at her more, which means she's taking up space and attention. She has decent damage, her range kind of sucks, but that doesn't matter. She just lives through everything. And then this one goes in leaks. So, just to make this all a bit prettier, here it is organized. Wait, is this right? Hold on. Yeah, this is right. Here it is organized by like tanks, DPS, supports. So here's like the final list. And yeah, I hope this was fun to watch. I'm not 100% on some of these, but just taking my best guess. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.